Out of the Blue number 431. So we're nearing opening day. I want to speak Neo-Swedenborgianistically for a moment. Make a few things clear. 3 things. First of all, call this Neo-Swedenborgianism because this whole Swedenborg reference is kind of weird and scares people away. So I've noticed that this talking about Swedenborg, people just like, huh? But Swedenborg is actually highly influential in our culture right now. And if you examine the foundations of our culture, you come across him. He's not a pillar of our culture or anything like that. But I'm in Chicago, and Chicago is designed by Daniel Burnham, who was raised Swedenborgian and who used Swedenborg's writings in his design of Chicago. And so Swedenborg influenced the design of the city I am in. Now, Daniel Burnham was a Swedenborgian, which was is a religion based on the writings of Swedenborg. It's a Christian religion based on the writings of Swedenborg. Neo-Swedenborgianism, what I'm talking about, is not Christian and not a religion. It is a way of looking at Swedenborg's writings as if it was all, essentially all in his mind, which means it's all neurophysiology. But included in this, in the mind bit, is the fact that it's hyper real. It's more real than this. And so by being more real than this, by appearing more real than this, he has to conclude it is more real. And he doesn't try to justify it being more real. So there's a mechanism in our mind which establishes what is real. And some of the people having these near-death experiences are catapulted into this more real land, which makes this land seem not real. Swedenborg and Swedenborgians and pretty much all religious people conclude that therefore that place is more real, and that's the heaven we're going to. To look at it Neo-Swedenborgianistically, which is what I'm talking about, is you can understand it as a mechanism in the mind which creates a greater appearing reality. Because there's no real reason to conclude that it is out there somewhere. So it's part of our neurophysiology. So neurophysiologically speaking, it is a chemical reaction that happens somewhere between here, and here, right? So it's somewhere in there. So that establishes it in time and space, which is why, as I've said, Neo-Swedenborgianism makes atheism obsolete. Now, Swedenborgianism, which is the religion, does not make atheism obsolete, because actual Swedenborgianism tries to propose that there is some place out there. Neo-Swedenborgianism proposes it's all in here. And for example, one of the proofs I use, which is by Martin Gardner, or it's inspired by Martin Gardner. Martin Gardner debunked Swedenborg. And as an aside, Martin Gardner was friends with my grandfather. Martin Gardner is part of this whole world. I've never met Martin Gardner, though. But my grandfather and him were pals. But I'm indebted to Martin Gardner for a lot. I had read Martin Gardner quite a bit even before I ever got here. So I didn't know he was pals with my very own grandfather. So I read him when I was out west. And then I get here and there's pictures of them, those guys palling around. But anyway, Martin Gardner debunks a lot of things. That's why I had read him. He debunked the Urantia book in a beautiful way. He wrote a whole book about debunking the Urantia book. He wrote an essay about Swedenborg, debunking Swedenborg. And one of the ways he debunks Swedenborg, which is that Swedenborg claimed to be traveling through the solar system and visiting other planets. And he claims to visit the planets and I think he says something like 5 planets in our solar system. But essentially, Swedenborg only visits the planets that were then known. And while traveling in this solar system, he didn't notice, or none of these angels told him, that there were other planets. See? So Martin Gardner says that that's one of the ways to debunk him, because if he was actually traveling through the solar system, he might have noticed or been told and written that there was a few extra planets. But in fact, he only visited the ones that they knew about at the time. Okay, and so therefore he wasn't really traveling in the solar system. And I agree with that. And that's kind of the foundation of one of my proofs, which is that this seemingly so real place, hyper real, more real than this, was all within his own psyche. And but he didn't just visit the planets. You see, he visited the people on the planets. These planets were peopled, and he spent time on them in this hyper-real fashion. So there is a greater reality, by which I mean literally a reality that seems to be much greater, that appears greater, feels greater, everything about it is greater within our own consciousness somewhere, that in these extreme states like the near-death experience, we get to go visit. And what we do in Neo-Swedenborgianism is we try to wrap our head around that and try to kind of figure out what it's like. Try to map this neurophysiological phenomena. And so just to close, to do that, we use 3 general sources. One is Swedenborg himself. His writings can be seen as a map of this psychic world. 2 is the near-death experience people, which some of the things they say are very similar to the Swedenborg type things, like cities of light, visiting cities, going to places, people waiting for you, meeting you. And the 3rd one is kind of the most fun, but it's also a little more nebulous, which is the spiritualist writers of the 1800s, like Francesco, there's J. Hewitt Mackenzie, there's the Intramunoz, and there's the Monsignor Hugh Benson. Those are the 4, and that's a lot of writing. That's many, many books. Because Hugh Benson actually was rather prolific. And so we consult those. So that's spiritualist readings, because they travel around these afterlife regions and talk and write in detail. It's if nothing else, it's very entertaining writing. So I'm going to wrap that up now. I'm kind of I have 2 other subjects coming up, which are Jimi Hendrix and Bob Marley and Haile Selassie. That's the next one. That will be 431.05. And then I'll introduce the 3rd one at the end of the next one. So next episode is what do we have to do with Rasta, right? Why do I mention Bob Marley? Well, stay tuned for that one. Thanks. See ya. Bye.